What we don't know about some of these services, and it's really critical that we're still largely in the venture capital funding stage. Twitter is absolutely free and no big commercial conglomerate owns it. Will Twitter continue to be as popular if it's purchased by Facebook? If it starts forcing advertising down the throats of its users? We don't know yet. Same thing is true of Tumblr, and if you have that kind of model, we don't really know what the future is going to hold.
Right, so we don't know if it's going to be, just another fad, if it's going to fade away if that happens. Now, one of the big questions on a lot of journalists' minds is, can blogging take over traditional forms of journalism? Now, Julia, do you think that blogging is going to be taking over traditional journalism?
Wow, well, I suppose it could. There's a lot of great hard-hitting blogs out there that present serious journalism. I don't think blogging is ever going to completely eclipse other types of news. I think there'll always be news websites out there and hopefully a few print papers and other ways to get your news. But I think it is becoming much more widely acceptable, and I think that's great. I mean, it's a great way to share information, and it's a great way to reach out to your readers. I think you had mentioned earlier, John, about how it really gives readers a chance to interact with you, because it's so much easier to leave a comment or send an email to a blogger than it is maybe to write a letter to an editor. So it gives this great sort of flow of news. And as a blogger, I definitely benefit from that because I get so many great tips from my readers. And I think it increases the loyalty. I have a greater, maybe a closer digital relationship with my readers than I ever did in print.
Right. What do you think, Sean?
I don't think it will. And I think that while Julia makes a great point, that it's more that it'll supplement traditional news than it will replace it. That if we think of news reporting as the fourth estate, that a lot of times we can think of blogging as the fifth estate. That a lot of blogs will be doing fact-checking and spin-checking on traditional news organizations. So while you will have blogs that are devoted to particular topics, fashion blogs or sports blogs or other things, a lot of blogs depend on the news for a lot of their popularity. And as we mentioned before, there are a lot of journalists that both write for online print online sources as well as have their own blogs separately. So it's something that with the creativity and the freedom and the bias that comes with blogs, that we still want to get a source of news that we can think of as more credible, that we can get from news organizations that we expect to have fact-checking, whereas blogs, we don't often look for that sort of oversight from an editor.
Ezra?
Well, it's precisely the snarkiness of blogging that kind of separates it from mainstream journalism. I want some hard facts from somewhere that I can believe, that I know have been verified by more than one source, that are written cogently and intelligently. And a lot of the blogging out there is very heavily opinionated, and some of it is ranting. I think there's room for both, absolutely, and they will exist side by side, but it doesn't mean that traditional journalism is going to go away.
All right. Now, Julia, is blogging going to be a viable avenue for new journalists who are just getting out of school, in this tough economy? Basically, are they going to be able to make money doing it?
Just as blogging, I would say it's very difficult to make a living, and I think it's important that young journalists coming into the field get some print experience and at least work in some kind of a traditional newsroom or a newsroom online with other colleagues, because you learn so much from your editors and other reporters that it's a really valuable experience. And I know that I wouldn't have been able to start my own blog and been a successful blogger if I hadn't had that print experience. In terms of making money, every venture is different, and journalists these days have to have a real business sense if they're going to be a blogger, because you're not just an employee anymore, unless you're hired by another blogger. If you're running your own blog, you really have to get those business skills to make it work.
Now, when I went, you just mentioned before, do what you do best and link the rest. How important, you mentioned how important it is to link stuff, but can linking help you monetize your site as well?
Definitely, because links are the way that you get your blog noticed. I mean, there's millions of blogs out there, right? And there's tons of websites out there. So how do your readers find you? Well, by linking to other sites and by getting other people to link back to you, you optimize your rankings in search engines. So if somebody went to Google and typed in bargains, if I have a really great search engine ranking, Bargain Babe will come up right towards the top, and they'll go to my site, hopefully. But if I have a really poor search engine ranking, which is typical when you just start out because you're trying to build traffic and I mean, it's just you just have to build up your links. Then I wouldn't come up, and then people would not be able to find me as easily. Like if you ever think about last time you've done an internet search, do you use Google?
Of course.
So how many times have you ever gone to like the second or third page of results? Probably never, right? Maybe a few times. So you really want to come up on that first page. And that's links is one of the way that you do that.
Now, John, do you think that blogging will continue to have an effect on us, or do you think it's kind of plateaued?
Well, I don't think that it's necessarily plateaued in the sense that it won't keep increasing in popularity, because it is that vehicle of self-expression, that it's the ability to self-publish, that anyone that has an internet connection can go on the web and post about whatever they want to, especially with, as Ezra mentioned, so many easy-to-use formats. But at the same time, I'm not sure where else the format can go in terms of communicating information. Some folks have started video blogging, but it's really just the same thing, but with a picture instead of just the object linking. So it seems like while the innovation in blogging might have stalled, that other things like Twitter or microblogging or social networking sites like LinkedIn or Facebook are starting to move in new directions with online content. The blogging itself doesn't really have somewhere else to go beyond reporting the information and linking to other sites.
Julia, where do you envision Bargain Babe to be in 4 years?
Well, that's a great question. I guess I haven't thought that far in advance. I'm thinking about a year in advance. But eventually I'd love to have sites for specific cities, because right now Bargain Babe is national, as I mentioned, and eventually I'd like to develop a site specifically for Los Angeles and a few major other cities across the country, and really be able to combine sort of the national tips with the local deals in your backyard.
Ezra, you mentioned before that everything that you're teaching in your class is like you teach new media will soon be obsolete. Where do you think blogging is going to be 4 years from now?
I have no idea whatsoever. I think it will still be around. I think the social needs that drive social networking sites and blogging are still going to be there. I first became aware of blogging really seriously at about 2000 when I stumbled onto this community of Singaporean 15-year-old girls who were interested in boys, skateboarding, and web design. So I think that kind of impetus is always going to be there. What form it will take, whether it will be video or text, I don't know.
John, where do you think blogging is going to be 4 years from now?
I think it'll expand in terms of topics. Like I said, the web technology and the ways that folks can use blogs have pretty much maxed themselves out at this point. That the question becomes a question of accessibility, not necessarily a question of evolution. So that when we have developing interest with more different communities about boys, or we have people finding additional niches for type of news they want, different news reporting, or God forbid, more celebrity gossip sites, that really what it's going to be is an expansion in the range of content, not necessarily the form of that content.
Wonderful. Julia, any last comments on where you think blogs will be?
I would agree with John. I think that the technology is out there. More people are learning how to blog. Certainly there'll be more blogs in 4 years, and there'll probably be a lot more blog readers because it's becoming much more widely accepted.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. I'm Robin Rhys, and this is On Point.